All right. Hello, Austin friends and beyond. This is our fifth installment of the Austin Ableton Workshop Series. We're really excited to have you tonight. I'm Alberto Chapa, Ableton certified trainer in Austin, Texas. And like I said, we've got a great stream for you today. But don't forget that these workshops, these streams are meant for you to have access to these very, very talented and knowledgeable presenters. And you have the ability to ask questions via the comment section. So if you're watching us through Twitch, Facebook, or YouTube, go ahead and type your questions in the comment section, and we will pass them over to our very talented presenters tonight. And just to do a test, let us know where you're watching us from. Say hello, shoot us your name, shoot us your Instagram or your socials. We want everybody to connect and get to know each other as much as possible. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everybody that the Ableton user group used to meet in real life, and Tom Carlisle, fellow Ableton certified trainer, has been setting up these ways for us to stay connected in the virtual space. So if you want to join the conversation and learn about Ableton and connect with other Austin Ableton users, you can join us on Facebook at /groups/Ableton ATX. You can also join us at www.abletonyears.com, which is a website that Tom set up so that we could sort of post about our get-togethers and events. And you can also join the Discord Abletoniers that Tom set up for us too, so that we can get together on there. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first guest, who's joining us all the way from Germany. He is a producer, drummer, and developer. Please welcome Tobi Hunke.
Hello.
Hey,
Alberto.
Tobi.
Hello.
Glad to finally have you in Austin, man. It's been a long
I'm in
time in the
Austin
making. You are, as far as we're concerned, while you're on the stream, you're in Austin.
As long as I'm, yeah, would be really nice to come, and I hope it's gonna happen soon, and we're gonna get over this. So yeah, but I'm now in Germany in a small town called Göttingen. It's 2 o'clock at night, so if I look a little bit sleepy, that's maybe why.
But you look great, and I really appreciate that you made the time to join us despite the time difference. And I know you prepared a lot of really great stuff for everybody. I just wanted to let everybody know what you're all about. You know, you're a very talented person. You've had a lot of experience playing in bands and playing in different spaces. But what you're here to talk about today is related to drumming and drums. And can you tell folks a little bit about Ableton Drummer?
Yes, I'm doing this blog and homepage and a Facebook group called Ableton Drummer, all things Ableton live and drumming. So I thought, as I'm a drummer myself, and as I was performing quite a lot, I was thinking about, hey, that's maybe the best resource where I could, or maybe that's the best theme I could, or subject I could give people a great resource to show. And then I started to develop Max for Live devices about 2.5 years ago. I started out with that, and yeah, getting a lot of interest there. And I'm pretty much focused on combining drums, hybrid drums, electronic drums with Ableton Live, and doing interesting things, hopefully.
So if people are watching the stream and they know drummers and they're not watching, share the stream with them, because they're gonna learn some really, really interesting things, especially if drummers use Ableton. I don't know that they use Ableton like this. So I'm gonna get off the stream and hand it over to Tobi. And if you have any questions, please type it in the comment section. I'll make sure that Tobi knows about them so he can explain all of his devices and magic that he's gonna show you.
Perfect. Thanks, Alberto, for this great introduction. Yes, so I usually do presentations, obviously, where I see the people and where I get some reactions. So for me, it would be really helpful if you have any questions. There are no dumb questions, and we are all here to learn. I'm really looking forward to the presentation from Claire as well, to learn myself. And every time I'm learning when I'm presenting as well, because people are asking me stuff and I need to explain it, or I need to find a way, or maybe I don't have the answer and someone else has the answer. So yes, please put in your questions. There are no dumb questions. So this really helps me to present and to see where you are. Okay, so I mentioned abletondrummer.com already, and I want to show you a little bit of musical stuff, or the music side of things I'm doing. So I prepared a little video from a performance with one of my projects, and I want to ask you if you could write into the comments what you think is happening via Ableton Live in this performance. And maybe a few people have a few ideas what's happening there and how I'm using Ableton Live in this exact situation. So Alberto has the video, if you could shoot that, and then we can maybe just drop stuff down in the comments and hopefully we're gonna get some reaction. Yes.
You are live.
All right. So, hopefully, a few people saw the video already and have an idea or were thinking about what's actually happening there with Ableton Live. So, we were looking at a video which is from 2015. It's a performance from my project called Ego versus Emo, live at the Fusion Festival. And we are kind of used to playing not like huge stages, maybe like places like up to 300-400 people. And sometimes you have a lot of things you can bring yourself or you can prepare yourself, especially for stages this size and for setups this side. And Ableton Live is a really good tool for that, especially in the setup to create the sound a little bit different and other things as well. So maybe if people are commenting, Alberto will drop in and let me know what's happening there. So in this example here, in the video, I was triggering sounds from my acoustic drum set. So for example, on the snare drum, you will have some more sounds, some clap sounds in the chorus, and they are automated, so they switch on in the chorus automatically and switch off in the verse. You can see me. I'm doing an announcement at the end of the song where my partner, my sax player, he's playing a solo. So I have a microphone just behind the drums, and as you might know this, it's not a good situation to have an open microphone like close to cymbals and stuff, because you get crosstalks from the cymbals into this microphone and you don't want this. So what you can actually do by routing this via Ableton Live, you could automate and MIDI remote turning on the microphone off with a stick by hitting on a pad. Another thing we are doing here is we are bringing our own lights. So sometimes you're playing smaller places and they don't have the budget for lighting person. So and you sometimes want, or this music is living from the atmosphere as well. People are dancing, and at the sax player solo, for example, you want him sending out some MIDI data to a second software, which is a DMX software, and this is controlling a few lights we're bringing ourselves, as we have to bring a lot of stuff anyways, because we are bringing a drum set and saxophone, microphones, etc. So we can bring a few lights as well. Okay, another point I want to point out here, another point I want to point out is that we're obviously using a lot of backing tracks here as well. So we are playing with the computer, and some sounds and some things are coming from the computer here as well. So this is one example, or a few examples here, which show you like how practical it could look like. Obviously, there is a little way to get there, and how to do this. So in my first part of this presentation, I want to start really, really basic and like on a beginner's level, like how you can connect an electronic drum pad to Ableton Live and what you can do with it once you've connected it right. Okay, so are there any questions so far? Probably not yet, but if you have any questions, because obviously the stream is a little bit behind and you're seeing this 20 seconds later, just drop in.
Somebody wanted to ask, actually, Toby, if triggering is also applied to lights, or is it also only applied to the audio and clips?
It's a pre-arranged, pre-recorded light show. And in this situation, this particular setup, we are not using like hitting the snare and triggering a red light, for example, but it's easy to set up if you want to do this and if you want to change this. And Ableton Live in between to control this is really great, because if you only use a DMX software and a MIDI note or a MIDI signal coming from your drum pad, then you might fix it to the red of one lamp and then it stays there. So if you want to change stuff, it's pretty good to use Ableton Live in between to change the what the hit is actually triggering, in what way, what lights. So maybe you want it to light up red in the first part and then light up green in the next part, or do something completely different later in the set. So you need some flexibility here in the connections you're making.
And they're asking to clarify if so the same drum can trigger both a light or be connected to light and a sound, right?
Yes. You are sending MIDI from the drum. So I'm going to demonstrate this in a second, how this looks like in practice. But actually, I'm using a, I'm not sure if you can see this. This is a drum trigger, which has a piezo, actually two piezos inside here, because it can detect if you're hitting the head or if you're hitting the rim. This goes onto the drum, and then it's being connected to a trigger to MIDI interface. And as soon as you have MIDI, you can trigger what you want with it in Ableton Live, and you can send this MIDI as well on the same time to a Lightning software, or you can send it to Ableton Live, and then make those different connections I was just talking about, like first part red light, second part green light, for example. You can change what MIDI goes out to the DMX software.
And they're asking if you could also give them the brand or model of the trigger that you showed us.
Yes, that's an RT10S from Roland. They have newer triggers now, but they are really good. So you get them really cheap from secondhand from eBay or wherever. And I know a lot of people who are still, like a lot of pros who are still using those older versions. So yeah, they are like 30 to 40 bucks if you get them, and you will need a trigger to MIDI interface. So just this alone wouldn't be enough, but you can get something like this. That's e-drumming interface. So you connect it here jack to jack. So you apply this trigger to your drum, and then you have a jack connection from here to here, and this trigger to MIDI interface is then being connected via USB in this case, or via a 5-pin MIDI out, going to your computer, and then you will receive the MIDI there. That's
Is that
all.
the audio? Is that the audio front?
Yeah,
Drumming.
Audifront e-drumming. Yeah, it's really great. I just started to use it. It's really small, so that's great for traveling once we're gonna be able to travel again. And it has 4 trigger inputs, 4 stereo trigger inputs, which means if I'm using a mono pad, I could actually plug an 8 in here, and it has, and that's really good, it has a foot switch input, which you can use for expression pedals, for on and off switches, for a kick pedal. So you will get like an editor, which you can use on your computer or even on iOS. And it's just really flexible, and it's really nice because sometimes on drum modules it can get a bit tricky to understand the different terms and what they're doing. Threshold might be obvious, but then scan time, mask time, different names all the time, and you sometimes don't get this like so easy, and you don't get through the different things which are getting in one module. But if you're seeing the hit on the actual screen, and you can see the hit, and you can really easy edit stuff there, and even have different settings for different presets. It's really great so far. So I can tell good things about this, and it comes for less than 200 US. So
We have, so we also have a question from Richard. He was asking a little bit more information about this. Have you ever built any triggers or built any hardware yourself to work on drums?
Well, yes and no. So the problem for cymbals, for example, is there are no, like, there's only one company out there, and they only have like magnetized triggers. So I'm actually later in the video we're gonna see. I'm for my hi-hat I'm using a really cheap piezo, which is like coming for $10 for 5 pieces or something, and this works actually quite well on a hi-hat. You just tape it onto the hi-hat, and so in some cases, if you're playing hybrid drums and at some point you need to somehow try out things yourself, so there's not like everything is not set yet, or always a product for there. So you have to do some DIY experience here as well. If, for example, if you want to get trigger signals from your cymbals. Yeah, so I'm not that much into hardware building. I'm more into software or Max for Live, especially building. So I would be very interested, because I know a lot of people who are using Ableton Live, but I think 2/3 of those people, I'm guessing, are not using Max for Live. There is like, people are scared about it. I don't know. I remember myself, like, I wasn't touching Max for Live for years, still using Ableton Live, and then once I started to use it, it was like, oh, interesting. So I hope I'm gonna, how do you say? I hope I'm gonna take back the fear people might have, because you might have the wrong impression of what you need to do if you want to use Max for Live. It's actually just like using a plugin. So yes. So should I just go over and show you a few things about how to connect an ePad and how to do different stuff in Ableton Live? I think that's the next bits.
That would be great.
Cool.
Is
It's
that the
so
next
weird.
video? Is that the next video?
No, it's I'm gonna show a few things now on my Ableton screen. So I need to change the screen here. So yeah, I'm gonna start with some basic stuff. So just that people who are completely new to this will have some ideas. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Cool. So as you can see, I have one SPDSX here, which is the most used electronic drum pad. It's been around for a little while, and there are different pads here as well. There is the Bob pad, for example. There's the Alice Strike Pro, and so there are a lot of different models here as well. And I'm just using this one because I got it standing next to the next to the table anyway. So the cool thing here is with the SPDSX, you can just install a driver on your operating system and then use a MIDI connection and even an audio connection with the SPDSX here. But we're going to focus on MIDI today. So what's really important here is always when you using external MIDI devices, you need to make sure that only the in and outputs you're using are being turned on. A lot of my clients who are calling me or who are like, shit, Toby, something is like weird and it's things are jumping twice back and forth. I don't know what's happening. And in a lot of those cases, it's due to this window here, which is in your preferences, and you will find this under link and MIDI. And we can see here that we have an input SPDSX, which is the USB input connection here, which I made before. And we're just gonna use the track input because we wanna send MIDI from the SPDSX into a track now. And we're even going to turn off the output here to make it really clear. So just this input now, just this connection is made now. And on this track here, I can see now that if I switch this off, for example, that I'm getting MIDI in. Usually you can see this up right here in the upper right corner if you are receiving MIDI, but maybe due to we're streaming this online here, you might not be able to see this, but usually you can see that MIDI is being received up here. You can control this up here, and then you can just drag and drop some presets onto a track, and you can actually play sounds here, and that's how easy it would work. There's some latency, obviously, because we're streaming this via the Zoom driver. So I'm getting 30 milliseconds latency here now between hitting and hearing the noise or the drum sounds. So obviously I've set this up. I've preset this up. So the pads are sending the right MIDI notes. I need to get to trigger the samples in here. So if I move this, for example, you can see if I want to trigger this field here in the drum rack, I need to receive a MIDI note pitch of E2. And so this could be the first problem you're getting here when you're connecting your SPDSX or a different drum pad here, that you're not sending the right notes. So this note here is sending a C1, and this is triggering the kick here. So obviously you can change what MIDI note is being sent from each pad here, from them in the menu, but some drum controllers don't have that nice settings here, or don't even have like different settings. The SPDSX, for example, like every kit, if I'm changing the kit, I can set different MIDI notes for each pad. So each preset kit has different MIDI notes, for example. So I'm now changing the kit from 20 to 21, and you can see just some pads are playing sounds here, and not all of those, because my pad is now sending different MIDI note pitches than I want to. So, and this is where you could use Max for Live, for example. So I made a device drum rack tuner, I call it. It's not actually tuning, it's repitching, but you can see that I'm getting the same values here, C1, C sharp 1, D1, D sharp 1, like those fields would be C1, C sharp 1, D1, and D sharp 1. And I get an input monitor here as well. Let me turn this off for a sec. So I get an input monitor. So if I'm playing this pad here, I see that I'm playing a G sharp 0. So what I need to do now is I need to change this field here to receive this G sharp 0 I'm sending in. But I actually just put in a sync button here. So all I need to do is press the sync button, play the field I want to play, the C1, and now it's mapped already. So I hope this makes sense already. If there are questions about this, and if this doesn't make sense, just please ask. We can switch back later, no problem. So the beauty here is I obviously can change stuff on the SPDSX, but seriously, if I just want to be quick and then have those different settings here, and now it's set already, and I can save this as a preset in my user library. I can recall this. I can even change like having multiple instances of this tuner and change this quickly in a set, automate turning those on and off, so I can actually change the pitch quite easy and quite flexible. Cool. The next thing I wanted to show you is if you want to MIDI remote stuff. So for example, you're using Ableton Live for firing up backing tracks. Let me move the SPDSX window here. You can really easy set up MIDI remote actions here via MIDI. So for this, we need a different input, because we're now not sending MIDI into a track. We're going to send in MIDI for remote purposes. And so we need to activate the remote input. Yeah. So I now can activate the MIDI map menu here by clicking on the MIDI button up here, and everything which is lighting up blue now is I'm able to control this or to MIDI map this to a field of my SPDSX. So if I'm hitting here now, I need to select something. So what I want to do is I want to select those two scenes here and fire those up by two different pads. So all I need to do is I need to select the field and then hit the pad, and this way it's already connected. So when I'm hitting now my first pad, you can see this loop, this scene is starting. If I want to change, yeah. So this is really easy, really straightforward, and I love that it's so accessible in Ableton Live that you just hit M or Command M, or press the MIDI button here, and you're able to MIDI map those things really, really easy and really, really quick. But on the downside here, there are a few downsides here as well, because you're losing those notes for playing sounds. So those notes you are using here now, we can see this here in the browser window on channel 10, note C2 and note F-2. They are now used, those two pads are now used for MIDI remote actions. And they can't be used anymore for playing sounds. So maybe that's not a problem, and maybe you're just gonna put different notes on the different presets on your SPDSX. But if you want to do stuff a bit more flexible, I thought it would be great to have a bit more flexibility for changing stuff as well. So if you're using, for example, this plugin, this Max for Live device I made here, they are all available. A lot of the stuff I'm doing is available for donation, and a lot of the things, or some of the things, are for a few available for a few bucks. So what I did here is you can just select a field and then hit a pad, and then it's detecting what note it has, and then you have all those different actions here which you can actually use for remoting stuff. So for example, track solo. So I can solo this track here now, and I can even move to different tracks here as well. So there are a few remote actions in here which are not accessible via the MIDI map menu here. Plus, the beauty is you can create a preset here, save it in your user library, and recall this like in every set you're needed to. So because all the MIDI mappings you're making here, they are saved in the set. So if you have a template, that's good. If you don't have a template, or if you want to change stuff, and if you want to use a field at one point in the set for MIDI remote, and if you want to use it later on for playing notes, you can't use the MIDI map mode stuff here. You need to find a different way. And if your drum controller, if your eDrum pad is not able of having different MIDI notes, sending out different MIDI notes, or if you don't want to change the presets in a set, this is one way of doing this. Cool. How are we doing with questions so far?
You actually answered the question earlier that was there a way to work around that? The MIDI mapping,
The MIDI mapping,
notes.
yeah. I mean, I love it. It's like, it was one of the things which like got me so excited when I started using Ableton Live, and I connected it to an eDrum, and just being able to, like, how easy is that? I love it. I love it. I don't know. It's great, but because it's so accessible and so easy, it comes with limitations here as well. And this is one way of like working around those limitations here. Cool. There is one more thing I want to show you for the SPDSX, and then we're gonna move on to some more creative, musical, triggering melodies things. Again, please, peeps, if you have questions, ask. We have a group about, put them in the comments here, obviously, but we have a group for people who are using or playing drums and using Ableton Live on Facebook, Ableton Drummer. We might put this in the comments somewhere, or put a link list together. So you can come there as well. If you're not watching this live now, you can come there and ask your questions as well. So there's one more thing I want to show you about the SPDSX, because you can store samples on here as well. So, and this is actually the main purpose, what it was produced for, to have like different drum samples on this SPDSX here. So let's say maybe you're only using Ableton Live for backing tracks and your drum samples are on the SPDSX. And then you're starting the next song, you obviously want different samples, so you might want different presets going through your different presets here. So this is doable with Ableton Live obviously as well. Native, again, you can send bank changes here. So let us quickly set this up. What you need to do is you now need to set the MIDI you want to send from this track here to the SPDSX. So you need to send MIDI out. So for this, we need to go into our preferences here and look under the output, and we got the SPDSX here, and we want to send out MIDI from a track. So we're gonna turn this one on here, and we're now able to pick the SPDSX as an output here. And what is really important, we need to set this to channel 10. So per default, the SPDSX will speak and receive MIDI messages on channel 10. And this is like the standard for drum modules and for drumming stuff. There is like a list of the different channels and the different messages for MIDI. And this is like what is channel 10 is the suggestion for eDrum manufacturers to use. So in kind of 99% if you're using some electronic drums, and if you want to talk MIDI from Ableton to an electronic drum, you have to make sure that you're sending stuff on channel 10. Okay, so you can, for example, do some changes here. Program change, we just need to send some change here. So have a look, we are now on 14. So if we play this, the MIDI should get sent out, and it's not happening. I've missed something here because I'm actually not using, it's a bank change. We need a program change. There we go. So I played this clip now here, and I changed the program change section. In the program change section, I changed the number which should be sent to 6. So every time this clip is being started now, being played now, this message 6 will be sent to my SPDSX on channel 10, and the preset will change to number 6. So same here as well. It's pretty handy. It's pretty straightforward. But what if I wanted to change later in this clip? I can't do this. I only can send natively program changes in Ableton Live with the beginning of a clip. So I need to set up some follow actions here, and I maybe like need then another scene, but I want to stay in the same scene. So what I did here was, and that's no big magic here as well, and this one is one of the things which are donation based and available on my homepage. I just set up this SPDSX control. So we are having a plus button here, and you can see on the SPDSX, the kit is changing. You even get a wheel here, and you can MIDI map those, of course. So if I go into MIDI map mode, or even if I go into key map mode, for example, I set up my 1 and 2 on my computer keyboard. So I can now control my SPDSX. I hope you can see this is probably quite small, but I can actually now control the kit change on my SPDSX via my computer keyboard. So, and now you can automate this. You can just create a MIDI clip. I have the feeling I'm talking really, really fast. And I can select the kit here and just go to a different kit in a different section of my clip. And you can see it's changing from 2 and 6, 2 to 7. And this is happening here on my SPDSX as well. It even talks back, so if I'm now pressing plus and minus, changing the kit on my SPDSX, this is received here as well. So if you just want to use this as a monitor on which kit you are actually, you can do this in Ableton Live as well. Okay.
One of the questions, Toby, is would this something like this work with the Alesis Sample Pad Pro?
The Alisa sample, I need to check. I have like the kit change should be program change as well on the Alisa's kits. I'm not 100% sure, but I have, for the stuff I showed you just before, the MIDI remote control is I got an Alisa's Pad Pro design here as well. So if you want to use this stuff, this is available as well. And I'm pretty sure that the SPD SX kit selector would work with the Alices as well. Just get it on my homepage, try it out. And yeah. Maybe a few words about Max for Live. That's actually it. You don't need to program stuff in Max for Live. You can just download this device from my homepage and put it in your user library, import it in your user library because it's a good place to store your externals, and then just drag and drop this onto the track, and there you go. And you can, yeah, just use Max for Live. You don't have to program stuff in Max for Live. Max for Live comes in the Ableton Live Suite version, and it can be bought as an additional add-on to the Ableton Live version, the standard version. So if you using the trial, or if you want to try it out, you can get the Ableton Live trial, Suite trial for free, and just check it out and see if it's something for you. Yes. Alberto, do you want to add something? I'm kind of like...
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit. Could you tell folks a little bit about your journey to Max for Live? Like, was this something that you were already doing and then applied it to your drumming, or did the drumming desire make you learn coding?
That's a good question. I mean, if I'm gonna stop the share so you can you see my... Can you see me now?
100%.
Yeah, cool, perfect. Yeah, so Max for Live, how did it start? I just knew that I wanted to do more and wanted to connect different dots of things which weren't able, or I wasn't able to connect in Ableton Live natively. So I was like, hey, there must be a way to get into this weird, complex sounding thing, Max for Live, and how to create this. And then I watched a few tutorials. I made one online course. So this was really helpful. And then I just started out spending time on it and trying things. And yeah, and it's just a lot of my musical creativity in the last 2.5 years went into creating Max for Live stuff. And yeah, I'm really happy to see like beautiful things people are creating with drums and music, and then I'm saying like, wow, that's beautiful, and they're like, yeah, I'm using your device. I'm like, wow, great. So it's yeah, it's very at the beginning, and then you learn more, but you are making less and less music probably. I don't know. You must have known this or heard this from a lot of people, I guess, so who are like getting into
Developers
Max for Live.
too. Yeah, definitely. And so the follow-up question for that would be, how often do you get people coming back and saying, look at what I did to your device? I took your code and took it to a direction that suited my needs. Has that happened yet?
Yeah, it happens from time to time, but not that often. It's more like that people are getting back to me and saying like, hey, I really like your device. It would be great if I would be able to do this and that with it as well. So but it's usually not developers themselves or people who are patching, it's called in Max for Live. And I don't know code, I'm not from a programming background at all. I just started because it was there and I knew it's somehow I can achieve stuff with it. So that's how I got into it, because I wanted to do certain things with Ableton Live and my drums and with lights especially. So I was kind of like I want to get in there. So I'm not like programmer at all. Like I don't know any code.
Well, I think you are now.
Well, yeah, of course, programming is like, of course, even if you do an Ableton live set for someone else, like who wants to use backing tracks or something, that's programming already. But I mean, like programming in the sense of like writing code. So
Yeah. It's very encouraging though, because I do meet a lot of people that are in music that want to start learning a little bit more about technology. And I always point them to Max for Live because it's a very user friendly way. Is there any way you could maybe show people inside of a device?
yes,
Is your computer set up for that?
yes, let's do this. So we can just look into maybe let's have a look into this device because it's quite easy. I hope that it's not too messy. So if you want to look inside a patch or a device in of a Max for Live device, you just have to press this patch button here, and then Ableton Live is automatically opening Max, uh, which is running in the background anyways, but it's like coming there, and it's somehow not. It might be like some screen share stuff properly. Maybe it needs a second.
Let's give it a second. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
a little shy when zooms out. Yeah, but for those of you that don't really know about Max for Live, it's basically a companion software now in Suite, like Toby was saying, and you can upgrade if you own Standard. And it really does open up a whole new world of devices and people like Toby that are developing very, very niche devices that do something that you wish your SPDSX could do, but it hasn't done it yet. Chances are there's a Max for Live device out there that can do it for you.
That's really interesting. Here, I might need to re-share my screen because it's open, but it's not showing up. So let's try it again. Share screen. So where is it? Is it behind here? No,
Nope.
no. That's interesting. That's one of those things with screen sharing stuff. I might just share Max because it's available here.
Good idea.
There it is.
Oh, for some reason we're getting just the device,
Yeah,
the display.
that was the plan, but I'm not getting it.
Well, I think that's it's a natural conclusion that folks are going to have to download it themselves and donate and open it up.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So usually it's like you can share stuff, but okay, one more try. If we are putting it on the different screen, maybe. No, it's not there. I can see it. It's grayed out actually. Interesting. Okay.
Well, we learned something new.
Every time something new. So yeah. But I mean, just contact me if you are interested in stuff and come to the Ableton Drummer Facebook group. There are lots of great people in there who are up for sharing their stuff. So 2 days ago, I forgot the name, but someone asked a question about a YouTube uh, video a drummer was doing, and then the guy himself like answered it like half a day later, like long test. long text and stuff. So it's mostly like really bad for people to come there and say, well, I have no clue how to do this. So where's the input? And we have like some of the big names in there as well. So it's quite often that people are asking like, hey, how's this guy or this person doing it? And then I can just say, hey, maybe you want to ask it, like maybe you want to answer it yourself, and just taking the person. So it's a really great group for that stuff.
That must
Yeah,
really, really warm your heart, man, whenever you see that the community that you've built and what it's turned into. And I really do encourage everybody in the Austin Ableton community to check out Ableton Drummer. We put the links for both your blog and the Facebook group in the comments so that people can follow.
perfect. So how are we doing with time? Should we have a quick look in the other stuff as well? Do you want to give me some?
Let's keep moving on. You also have a video, right, that you wanted to show?
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you have a few more topics? Or we're getting close to the end of our time slot, but I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, let's have a look into the other the other movie. So because what I showed you just now was like really basic things, and maybe I want to show you some stuff which is possible when you are going a bit more advanced here. So
All right, let's cut to the video. Here we go. And we're back.
cool. So a bit more advanced setup here, and actually just using a kick, a snare, and a hi-hat, and one electronic pad here. So I mentioned this earlier. I'm using those triggers here on the snare drum and on the kick drum as well. On the hi-hat, there is piezo pickup, and this is all going into a trigger to MIDI interface, the E-pad as well. And then as well on the hi-hat, there is piezo pickup, and this is all going into a trigger to MIDI interface, the E-pad as well. And then I'm getting MIDI notes in Ableton. So that's very similar actually to the SPDSX pads, but it's just external pads creating those trigger signals, and they are then converted into MIDI. And then it's like playing an e-piano actually. You can trigger sounds here as well, but you're only getting one note per pad or per trigger. So I created a device which lets you like trigger a sequence of notes one after one. And I quickly want to show you this. You're not gonna understand everything here at the beginning, but I made like 2 really long videos with example sets for this device here. So if you want to dive deeper, they are on YouTube, just Ableton Drummer there as well. It's like without a gap, so Ableton Drummer in one word. And you can dive deeper in here. I quickly just want to show you how you can set this up, or how a more complex Max for Live device for triggering melodies could look like, or would look like. So I'm gonna share you my screen again, and you can see now I have one track where I have one device in front of a grand piano plugin. So if I'm now playing and activating this track now here, you can see that when I'm playing, I'm getting all those different MIDI note pitches here, and they are going into the grand piano preset from Ableton Live. But only one note. So I have this device here, which is very similar. The editing is very similar to editing in a MIDI clip. So you get the piano roll here where you can move up. If I get the sometimes acting weird because of Zoom. Interesting. Okay. So I can go up here and just put in a melody, and I have the preview button here as well. So if I'm putting in a note, I can hear those notes here as well. I'm just putting in a random melody, this melody here, and I can now trigger this melody step by step. So I'm going to use the trigger button here now. Yeah, just some random notes in here as well. And now I could set the steps, how many steps this sequence should have. So I put this down to 7. And now when I'm at the end of the sequence, I can trigger this through. And I can do this via my SPDSX here, or via drum trigger. This would be like, would work with every external MIDI hardware, or even with your computer keyboard. So this could be a push, this could be any other MIDI hardware which is sending MIDI notes. So you just need to set the pitch of your MIDI notes, which are coming in here as well. So I can press S here again for sync, and now this field here is waiting for the pitch I'm gonna be sending in when I'm hitting this pad here. So now it's synced already. It's the G#3. And I can now trigger through this sequence here. Yeah. So far, so easy. So I have a few more little things I want to show you here. The device goes quite deep. You can copy stuff from sequences. You can even import stuff from MIDI clips here. So if you have notes in here, you can import those notes as well. And the velocity as well. You have a velocity window here as well. You can change the velocity and the duration. And you can set sequences here as well, and then, or set scales here as well, I meant, and then just use those different buttons, for example, to go back, one step back, or to repeat the last note. It's playing me 2 notes for some reason. Okay, random as well. You can press reset as well, so you will start at the beginning again, and you can jump to certain points here as well. So if you, for example, have 64 steps in here, you might want to jump to a certain point in your sequence here. And this is the way how to do this. So, questions so far. Gonna wrap up after I showed you one more thing. So if you got any questions left, please ask them now or come into the Ableton Facebook group, or write me an email, or we get in contact different ways. So
There was a question about if you could explain can you go back one tab to trigger edit?
yes.
The jumps a little bit more in detail.
Okay. So jumps just mean, so let's set up a sequence where we have, like, let's say 60 notes. I got a good idea. So I can combine this. So let's say I want a scale. I want to input a scale here from, let's take C1 and let's put in a pentatonic minor, for example. I'm gonna apply this scale here, and now I'm gonna have, I can even fold this to make this visible a bit better. So I now get C pentatonic minor scale here. And let's say I want to jump to the C2. So which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth step here, always when I'm hitting one certain pad. So I could set this up here and say jump to 6. So when I'm now pressing this button, or I could map this or do this via a pad here as well, I'm always jumping to the 6th button here, and maybe put this one to 1. So now I'm jumping between 1 and 6. And if I combine this with my pads here, I'm now going forward with the first pad. This is what we set up, what I set up first. Yeah, so this way you can navigate through the sequence in various ways. And what's really nice here as well is if you're gonna use the random function here, let's set this up with another pad and then get a nice sound, a different sound than the piano. Maybe let's take some vibes, vibraphone. Maybe what do we get in here? So just that it's really a good example to show you. Let's take, something like this. So it's getting a bit more musical now. So I can trigger forward with the first pad here. And then I maybe want to jump to a random point. And this would be the 4th pad. I get up to 16 sequences. So I could set up different scales here as well, jump through different scales, and then have for my kick drum, for my snare drum, for my hi-hats, different tracks here with different melody trigger devices. That's the name of the device on here. And this way I can get really musical with my drum kit here as well. Were there more questions?
We just have a hi from Dustin Ragland.
Dustin.
Fellow CT.
Nice. Great. Yeah, so obviously this was just a quick thing to show you, and you have seen in the video what you can do with it. Obviously it takes a little while to get into it, and for this obviously I'm teaching online as well. We have the Facebook drummer group as well, and I have a few online courses as well, especially for the SPDSX in conjunction with Ableton Live, because there are much more things you can do. So if you are interested in this, just get in touch, and we looked at a different few things of how to make use Max for Life to make your life easier, and to maybe do some things which are not that easy to achieve natively, and maybe sometimes not that easy to understand and to get through in this way. So yeah, Ableton drumming can be a lot of things, and backing track operations, so playing backing tracks, and in a lot of the cases, if there is not a certain person for the backing tracks, um, uh, I think in 80% the drummer is doing it. If the band member is doing it, you can do recording, obviously, with Ableton Live as well, recording your drums and audio processing live as well. Yeah, you can use it for playing drum sounds. So this comes very interesting. For example, on the SPDSX, you can only have like one sample for all the different velocities, for all the different volumes you're playing. And obviously that's not gonna sound that natural. So if you want to play like more natural sounding drums, acoustic drums, for example, you need to have multi-layered um, recordings and samples. So for that, Ableton Live is really great as well. And as well for MIDI effect engine stuff like melody triggering lights, or triggering video. You have a lot of different ways of, once you got MIDI, you can do nearly everything. Yes. So yes. I don't know. Are there any more questions, or?
No, just a lot of very grateful people that are
Cool.
appreciative of your time, and appreciative of you staying up late and sharing all this with us.
Yes. Yeah. It's 3:15 now. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, really interesting. So please join the conversation. Come to the Facebook drama group, and we see like if I can give you a hand with stuff. And as I said, online teaching obviously is getting more popular as well. I'm really looking forward to Claire's presentation now. So yes.
Yeah, that's going to be great. So everybody, thank you, Toby. We'll be right back. We're just going to set up for Claire. And I'm sure this is where everybody would be clapping for you, Toby, right now. So great job. All right, folks, we're back and we have another special guest. Joining us from New York is a fellow fly trainer. She's also a producer, performer, and educator. Please welcome to the stage Claire Lim, also known as dolltr.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Alberto. This is super fun.
Yeah, it's super fun to have you. I was very aware when the new batch of CTs came into the fold, and I've said it many times on this stream. I love collecting CTs like they're
Oh my god.
Pokemon.
I feel like at this point maybe there's like some kind of slogan for the user group. Like maybe it's like Austin user group, gotta catch 'em all or something like that.
Gotta catch them all. Yeah. And one day we'll have every single CT
Oh my
on
god.
the stream.
Cool.
It's just such a great community, and I think it's all the richer for having you in it now. And just
Thank
from
you.
the stuff I've seen online, like you're a really dedicated educator, and you're always performing and streaming and doing a lot of really cool stuff.
Thanks, really appreciate it. I mean, we were actually just like offlining about it too, but I think as we kind of both know in this type of pandemic sort of situation, really to just keep doing things helps a lot, and to kind of keep you moving and stop you from being in a rut, really. So I guess we're just all doing what we have to do, and in our case, it's to create music. So that's always a really good excuse to keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
I don't know if you were probably connected at the earlier masterminds that our mutual friend Laura, hey Laura,
Yeah.
used
Hi,
to set
Laura.
up.
Laura's watching.
Laura's always watching.
Yeah, I feel like she is, but like it's in a very like omniscient sort of thing, you know. She For everyone who doesn't know Laura Escudé, she's the OG Ableton certified trainer, the very first. So I feel like she's always kind of watching over us.
She's on all the streams. But
Probably.
somebody on her stream said, I think very early on in COVID, how fortunate we are that in the middle of a world crisis, we still get to talk about music and talk about connecting with people via music. And it's a great life to live. It's a great opportunity to be able to connect with people in this situation.
Yeah, totally. That's actually something I've been talking about with a lot of my students as well, because you know both of us are CTs, and we both work a lot with different kinds of folks. I work a lot with people who are usually younger than me. So as far as like kids go, sometimes K through 12, sometimes also college students. And I was having this conversation with one of my older students who was in high like a webcam. Like sure, it's a webcam. You're not meeting in person, but you're still able to connect with somebody like we are now, and like everyone is watching. So yeah.
Yeah, it's the more time passes, it feels like Zoom is real life now. Like I don't have a
Oh God.
separation. So if I'm connecting with you, I'm connecting with you. Like either you're in Austin or I'm in New York, but it feels
Yeah.
as real as it gets these days.
Yeah, but I guess now I'm in Austin. Like since
You're in
I'm there
Austin.
for like
Welcome.
I guess, thank you. It feels good to be here. I do want to go eventually though, especially for something like maybe South by or something
Yeah.
similar. So yeah.
We had a really cool Ableton event. We're gonna have like a South by meetup, basically a user group of like all the different
Oh
disciplines
my
that were
god.
there, and of course it got canceled. But hopefully it's gonna be pending for 2020
So
something.
like fingers crossed, always. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, I know you've got some really cool stuff to share. I'm gonna hand the stream over to you, and if folks have questions, I just want to remind you to post them in the comment sections so we can have Claire answer them.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Thanks, Alberto. So just so everyone's on the same page too, like I know we're kind of on all different platforms, but I'll try my best to answer all the questions, and Alberto's gonna help me out with that too. So thanks, Alberto.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. But yeah, let's just get started. And maybe before I even start sharing my screen with y'all to show you a couple of things, maybe I'll just precede this by giving a little bit of background for a lot of the stuff that I do in relation to live performance. If you saw the description of all the really cool promo stuff that Alberto's been putting out, you might have seen that today I wanted to focus a little bit on how to use vocals in the setting of live electronic performance. So, for me, usually when I think about a live performance, there's really something special and almost sacred about being in the same room as someone and experiencing that moment together. And, you know, that can't necessarily happen now because of the entire COVID situation. But my hope is that through some of the tools that I'll be sharing with you, maybe you can even apply this in your streams if anyone out there is doing like live stream vocal performances or anything like that. I will also say that even though this is on like a vocal sort of focus thing, I feel like some of the concepts could also be applied to other instruments too. For example, some of the things that I'm sharing today are also what I use on my flute. I'm also a flute player, so I sometimes include flute in my live set. So maybe those are going to be some considerations too. But what I'm going to do now is show you my live screen. So let's pop over into live. And boop, here we go. Great. So as you can see, my live is purple, mostly because like I like purple a lot. My tracks are also all purple, as you can see. But generally, when I think about live performances, I try to think about the idea of vocals being almost like an instrument. So not always even just vocals separately, but you're using it as a tool to enhance the different ways that you perform live. And I think that's a little bit more different from, say, production or just programming in Ableton Live or in whatever DAW you use. It, even if you're using Logic or Bitwig, which I use both of too. Those are like maybe my second and third DAW. I love all of the DAWs. It's a bit like choosing your favorite child. But no, over here we've got live, especially because this is the Ableton user group. But I do like live a lot for live performance. People forget this too, but I share this with a lot of folks who end up calling live Ableton, but the word live is on the logo itself. So live is the software, Ableton is the company, and I think I might be working on some merch. So maybe eventually you'll see a dolltr shirt with that or something like that. But what you're seeing over here in my live set, to also put things into context, it's not a focus of my presentation today, but I have Push here next to me, which is this particular device, and I'm going to be using it to do a couple of loop-based things when we eventually get to looping. I use this a lot in my live performances, so if anyone's ever seen me do things like on Instagram, for a second I forgot the name of the platform, goodness, Instagram or YouTube, where I'm active over there as dolltr, so DOLLTR exclamation point CK. You'll see me use Push a lot, and that's because I'm a big fan of how you can kind of pack everything into one. So I'm going to be using one device. So I'm going to be using it a little bit today, but the main focus is my live set over here. So we're in session view, and maybe the first thing off the bat that you might notice is I have a couple of tracks set up here, but my first two on the left and the right, and I joke about this again a lot with my students too, but when I think of live performance vocals, I usually think of them as being quote unquote clean versus not clean. So it's the idea of vocals that maybe sound a little bit more, for lack of a better word, pristine or unprocessed, even though they do have processing on it. And then things that are maybe a little bit more affected. So that's like the not clean part of this. And just to emphasize what I mentioned in the last sentence, everything is processed in live performance. I think sometimes we forget about how much like audio engineering actually goes back into making a live vocal sound good, especially if anyone out there is a singer or a vocalist. If you're a vocalist, let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. But maybe, and this maybe also stems back to my own vocal experiences too. But before I got into electronic music, I still occasionally used to do like vocal based performances. And for me, all that I knew was that mic. And maybe the most that I knew at that point was, how should I even describe this? Like, it was just me and my relationship with the mic and the distance in between. And I knew that if I placed the mic too close, that sounded bad. If I had it too far away, that also sounded bad. But I didn't even realize that after my mic is picking up my vocal, that's going to someone who's like in charge of working with the audio, who's in charge with putting things like compression on it, who's in charge with EQing it if my vocal has certain kinds of resonances. And because of that, I started thinking a lot more after I became an electronic musician about how I'm actually putting this into the context of a live performance in Ableton Live, since that was my main weapon of choice for a lot of the live shows that I do. So I wanted to walk everyone through a couple of processes today that I think about whenever I'm setting up vocal chains, not just for myself, but also for other people. So prior to the pandemic, I used to work a lot with other artists as well as their live experience designer or rig designer, where I would help them set up their electronic live rigs. So for example, getting keyboards together, setting up things like vocoders, other sorts of situations where you have live instruments coming into play. So this is something that probably only they and myself have been into in such detail, but I'm going to walk you through that today. And I'd like to start off with the clean vocal. So I've also got an incoming vocal over here. You might be able to see it in live, although at the moment I do have monitoring off. And that's because Alberto and I were just talking about this too, but anytime you turn on monitoring and you have Zoom going, the latency is a little crazy. So just to demonstrate this, I'm going to switch my monitoring to auto, and you're going to hear two of me that are very delayed. And it's not processed, but maybe this could be a part of the vocal processing stuff that we do. Maybe we want some kind of crazy slapback sort of effect later, but that's a little bit for later. So I'm going to keep this muted for now. That said, later I might even record myself maybe singing a little bit of information or working on that. But I want to keep going and talk a little bit about some quintessential types of devices and types of racks that I put on a certain vocal. And I also want to bring up this idea of racks in live in general. And even if you're not a vocalist, my hope is that, you know, you'll take away a couple of things that maybe you could apply to your own sets too. And one of them is probably racks. That I love racks so much. I think they're probably one of the most underrated things in live. They're one of the most commonly used things, but people don't actually realize how cool they are. And when I take a look at racks, I always think about customization. I think that's like so important to me, being able to make live work for me so that I'm not working for live, although I work with Ableton, the company. But back on topic, if you are ever using some kind of rack, you can use it to combine things like audio effects. And that's specifically an audio effect, right? That's what we're going to look into a bit more today. But when you start building different kinds of devices, so let's say if I continuously start, you know, having a certain kind of sequence of live devices or sequence of audio effects that I end up using for everything, then I might just go ahead and put together a rack. And in this case, I've even saved it into my library. So I have a rack that's called CML vocal rack for recording. And that's just saved into my user library in live so that every time I record a vocal, I'm pulling that up. And I've also saved it to my collection so that I can find it over in my cool label. And again, collections are something that came out in Live 10. So you can only do this in Live 10, but probably one of my favorite things about the latest update of Live and how it came about to help with organization. But let's walk through a couple of things. I've got my clean vocal over here. And maybe just to even start off, I'll record like maybe just me counting some numbers. That could be a good way to start. I'm going to turn on the metronome at the top left-hand corner of Live. And let's go ahead and start playing some stuff. And I'm just going to record maybe like a 1, 2, 3, 4 to get us started. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, so metronome off, that wasn't too bad actually. But if we do take a look in the clip, so my timing from note to note in a relative sense was pretty okay, but you'll notice that everything's a little bit offset, and that's really just because of the way the current loop is set out. There's a couple of ways that we could work around this actually. One of the ways is to start the playback position a little bit later, so I could move the start point maybe slightly off there, or I can move that here. And this way, whenever I launch this clip, it's going to start in time with the metronome. Let's see if this works. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So that's one way you could kind of offset this. And you know, this isn't even specifically related to vocals, but it's a cool thing that you can do with audio. The other way we could do it is to quantize the audio itself. So what I'm going to do is make a copy of the clip for now, just to illustrate this. And I've got the second clip. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's reset the playback position. Let's bring back the playhead all the way to the start. So now we're getting that offset timing again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But we can absolutely quantize this. So if I press inside this sample editor at the moment and I say Command A to select the entire clip, or Control A, depending if you're on a PC or a Mac. I should mention that anytime I say Command A as a shortcut or Command in a shortcut, the PC equivalent will be Control. So Command if you're on a Mac, Control if you're on a PC. So now I've got this set up. Let's press Command U or Control U, and now Live will try to quantize things. But what that essentially does is it puts in little warp markers where it thinks the transients are. So because of that, it makes it easier to manipulate a little bit. So I'm going to move some of these sounds around, and let's take a listen. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That also works too. Of course, a couple of the sections sound a little bit different now that they've been time stretched and so on. So maybe for now, what I'm going to do is go back to the first clip. Let's 1, 2, use this one instead. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm also going to temporarily deactivate the second clip by pressing the number 0. So now we're focused on this. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about as far as a signal chain goes is one of my favorite things in Live. I joke about how if someone took Live away from me and I had to pick like, I don't know, 2 audio effects to bring with me. It's like those weird questions that people ask you about if you get stranded on an island, like what will you bring? If I got stranded on an island, I could only pick like 2 audio effects to take with me in Live. They'd probably be EQ and compression. So let's start off with some. Ooh, Alberto? Sorry,
I said
did you?
whoop, whoop.
Yeah, totally. No, I feel like it's so underrated, right? Like, I mean, everyone like kind of looks down on EQ and compression and they're like, oh, it's just EQ and compression. but it's EQ and compression. Like I get really excited about it too. But anyway, but let's take a look at EQ. So I'm gonna click in the browser over here, and usually EQ is housed in audio effects. Let's go ahead and pull this over here onto this track. So I'm going to temporarily turn off my vocal recording rack and all of its inbuilt devices. I'm going to show you a little bit of that later. But let's start off with some EQ. So let's play this back and let's check out what my vocal kind of sounds like and looks like. So I'm going to also bump up the volume a little bit too. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you might see that that's got a lot of low end in it. For a lot of vocal stuff, especially if you're working with a vocal that's a little bit higher in pitch, so from a traditionally woman or female sort of voice, for example, we don't always need any of that low information. So usually for a lot of vocal processing that I do, especially if it's in a live performance where you really want to have a lot of control over your mix and the bass frequencies, anything that's in the lower range too, I try to put on a high pass filter. This is going to be in the lowest band of EQ8, which is this particular device that we're looking at in live. And what EQ8 is great for is having 8 different EQ bands that you can manipulate individually. So usually when I'm working with EQ8, almost always the first thing that I do when I have a vocal is to give a high pass filter and bring it up until where the vocal starts to really sound high pass. So it's almost like going super extreme and then bringing things back a little bit. So let's do it. Let's go like super extreme and see if we can find a sweet spot. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. So I'm actually going to stop there. It's a little bit higher than I expected, but hey, it sounds pretty neat. A great way that you can kind of compare what the EQ is doing or what it's not doing, if you ever want to check, is to do something called A-Bing. And that in live, when we do that, it's usually just to turn a device on and off. So if I can turn the device off, here's before EQ. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and here's 3, after. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So if you hear it immediately before and after, you can hear the audible difference. But that's it. If I just played this for you off the bat, like if I talked for a little bit longer, la 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 la, and we kind of relaxed our ears a little bit, refreshed our ears, had a clean cleansing of the ear palette, if you will, and if we just listened to it, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. It actually doesn't sound too bad. So that's the first thing that I do. I usually have some kind of high pass filter on a vocal. If it's a male vocal or if it's a lower type of voice, again, I try to do the same thing. I try to be a little bit more extreme first and then dial back on it. In the case of that kind of voice, though, there's a lot of lower frequencies that are a little bit more crucial to the original timbre and the original sound of the voice. So I'll usually do a high pass filter, but also do a dip over here around the mid range, so around like 200 and something. But I'm going to go ahead and reset that now. So if you ever want to reset any control in live, for example, the gains of your EQ8, like over here, I'm going to just double click on that and it'll automatically go back to the default. And I'm also going to head over to the high pass filter and just bring that up a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think that sounds okay. The next thing that I like to do a lot for vocals, and this is actually maybe a bit more specific to me and specific to a couple of folks who have a little bit of a resonance in their voice. It's a little bit hard to tell exactly what this is, but maybe for anyone who's watching tonight, especially if you happen to be, say, a vocalist who ends up working a lot with your own vocals like I do. I often have to like mix my own vocals, tune my own vocals, a bunch of those things too. I like to listen very carefully and after a while, and this is something that happened for me really after a long time, I realized that my voice kind of has a natural resonance around the 3 kilohertz range. So that's like around 3000 hertz. It's going to be somewhere around here. I'm not going to play it while boosting it at the same time because it might kill our ears and we want to protect our ears, but maybe I'll just do a little bit. So usually my voice is like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and usually 4. If I'm singing, there tends to always be like a super resonant place around the 3 kilohertz range. How did I actually realize that? Well, it came out from just a lot of experimentation with my voice. And then I realized every time I was EQing it, I was always taking out 3K. So I was like, hey, Claire, you're kind of resonant around 3K. So that's why I started creating different kinds of presets, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. So that's one thing that I do a bit for my voice too. I kind of have a little tiny dip around 3K. And usually I make the bandwidth or the Q a little bit smaller too, so that I'm not dipping down too many other frequencies. The other thing that I try to do for my voice, and this is super applicable to any folks out there who maybe, if you've ever heard friends tell you that your voice is like a lot of whispery sorts of things in it, or different kinds of higher tones, you might have something that's called a hypersibilant voice, like me. And it's not too much of a problem if you know what actually it is. So for a lot of folks, if you have a hypersibilant voice, anything that is a sibilant sound, so things like those like really high frequency sounds, will tend to cut through a lot more compared to people who don't have a hypersibilant voice. And usually hypersibilance happens when, and this is like my nerdy theater school drama weird education part coming in, but if your tongue is usually articulating like very closely to the back of your teeth, like mine just did in the entire last sentence, you'll have a hypersibilant voice. So anything that's a sibilant sound will be very, not very piercing, but it'll be more prominent than someone whose tongue is placed back further in their mouth from their teeth. So that's just something to be aware of if you've been EQing a lot of vocals, or maybe you're working on another vocalist's voice and you notice that they're like super hard to control with sounds like all of these like higher sounds. So what I like to do also usually is do a little tiny dip at my sibilant area. For me, I found that that tends to actually be around like 6K or 7K. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this fourth band of EQ8 into a band. And what I'm going to do is I'll show you a little bit of what I mean. We might be able to hear this a little from the word 2 in my counting, but let's see what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, yeah, 3, you'll see 4. that in this case, actually, it's even a little bit different too. In this case, the sibilant part really is not too bad. And also it's around like the 7 or 8K range. But in any case, I'm going to just demonstrate this a little. So I do a little dip down there and also just increase the Q. So that's really just taking out that little sibilant part. That said, the more you experiment with this and the more you get in depth, you might develop some kind of specific EQ shape that you use a lot. And I do hope this isn't alarming. I'm going to turn off my EQ, but I'm going to turn on this vocal recording rack that I had and show you the usual EQ that I have on my voice to start off with. So this is just like rudimentary EQ to fix different parts of my vocal that I've become a little bit more cognizant about. And I will also add that this preset was developed for this specific room. So depending on what kind of room you're into and what room you're recording your vocals in, that's something that you might also want to consider, whether the room has specific resonances because of the way it's built or because of its shape or its height. So a few other considerations too, but let's check out this EQ. Ooh. So this is what I have instead. Here is before. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, and here's 4. After. Now it doesn't sound like, it might sound a little bit sad actually when you you hear it, and that's because what an EQ is doing is you are actually controlling, if you think about it, the specific volumes of individual frequencies. So if you have a lot of aggressive EQ, you may change the overall perceived volume of a sound, but that's something that we can always try to help a little bit with when we get into the second favorite thing that I love putting in, and that's compressor. So we're going to keep this EQ up over here. I'm just going to double click on its name so that it folds up and gives us a little bit more space to work with in the device view. But then we're going to go ahead and press, or not press, but get the compressor. I was going to say press the compressor. No, but we're clicking on the compressor and we're dragging and dropping it onto our track. So here is before. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, but this is really where we kind of get a little bit more in depth into compression and ideally how it works. There are actually many ways to use a compressor. Maybe some ways are more common than others. Maybe some are thought of as more right than others. But here are just some general guidelines I think of, especially when I'm doing super quick vocal compression. So not diving in like super in depth, but just doing a couple of things. One of them is to just bring down this threshold control right to where my vocal is coming in. Anytime that you see the word threshold, if it's on a compressor or another a device that's called a gate, which we'll actually get to later in a little bit. Anytime you see any of these words, it usually refers to the point at which a device starts acting. So if I'm thinking about compression in this case, I want the compressor to start compressing whenever I have maybe certain words that are a little bit softer, or whenever my vocals are coming in and being detected. So that's really where the compression is going to start in. Let's take a listen and adjust a few of these settings on the compressor.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3,
And you'll
4.
notice that as I started bringing the threshold down, we automatically had an increase in volume, and that's because of something called makeup gain. In live, this happens by default in a lot of the compressors, but essentially when you compress something, you're making the loudest sound, I'll put my hand up here, I was like blocked by my mic, the loudest sound softer, and the softest sound louder. So you're taking the entire big fluffy sandwich and you're squishing it so that the start and the bottom of the sandwich and the top of the sandwich are closer to each other. And then you have to bring all of the sandwich up so that it used to be as tall as the sandwich initially was. So that's a lot of what the makeup gain has to do in this case. You can check this out over here as well. If I play this back,
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3,
there's a
4.
yellow bar over there that's kind of moving up and down a bit, and it's labeled GR. That's called gain reduction. So that refers to how much of the volume is being reduced, and that's really why the makeup gain comes in. If I turn makeup gain off,
1, 2,
you won't hear the
3,
makeup
4.
gain.
1, 2,
let's turn it
3,
on.
4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2,
You
3,
hear that
4.
being compensated for. And generally, if I'm doing some really quick vocal compression, I don't do it super aggressively, so I try to have it come in at a threshold where my voice is coming in. More often than not, I tend to even just set it to auto for the release of the compressor, and I might even up the ratio just a tiny bit, maybe to about 3,
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3,
just to get
4.
a little bit of a tighter catch on my vocals. And now that I take a look at this, I might even go back into my EQ and possibly even bring this back down a little bit. Maybe let's see what that sounds like.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2,
Or bring
3,
it up.
4.
In this case, I feel like bringing it up was a little bit cooler. So that's kind of like the two main things that I like to do a lot of. And between the EQ and compression, usually when I'm working on a vocal super quickly, I usually pull both of them on at the same time, and then I'm immediately working with both of them. And also it's partially because I know how these devices work, and I've worked with them so much that I know how they behave. So that helps a lot with how fast things get done. So that's kind of like the clean side of things. And at this stage, we cross into a bridge of the not clean stuff. But before we cross into the not clean stuff, maybe let me just check. Alberto, are there any questions so far? And if there are no questions, that's totally cool too.
Not so far.
Awesome.
But we encourage people
cool.
to chime in if they do.
Yeah, totally. Everyone, please write if you have questions. You can put it in the YouTube chat. You can also put it on Facebook, and I believe we're also on Twitch. So any questions, more than welcome. We love questions. But cool, I've got my EQ, I've got my compressor, and you'll also see that over here in my vocal rack, I do have my own little compressor thing here too. So I'm gonna turn this side compressor off, and let's take a listen. So here's EQ.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So that's really where it kind of comes in. And maybe for this purpose, I might even just try to record some vocal stuff too. So let's do this again. I'm actually not sure how on pitch this is going to be, but this is a line from, I think, one of my tunes that I wrote. I say that as if I can't remember it, but I just wrote it quite some time ago. But I think it might be suitable for this time. So what I'm going to do is make this a little bit softer. So bring the volume down. And we'll just do a little bit of vocal recording for some melodic lines. So
1,
here's
2,
a metronome. Let me stop that clip over there. Cool. So I'm just going to record a vocal loop with push. Let's wait. Here we go. Don't say in love, then throw it away.
Don't say.
Whoops, accidentally did that because I was doing fixed length. Haha. On push. Cool. Let's try that one more time. Say in love, then throw it away.
Say in love, then throw it away. Say in love, then throw it away.
Cool. So let's also tidy this up a little bit as far as timing goes.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it
And of
away.
course, that was a little short. But just to illustrate this, let's turn off the vocal recording rack for now and see what this sounds like.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say
You can
you're
even hear a hint of my S consonant, the S sound. But if we turn this back on,
say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away.
you still hear the sibilants, especially after the compression, but it's not as resonant. And maybe that's something I should have clarified a little bit earlier too. So I'll clarify it now. Usually when I'm doing the EQ stuff and the compression stuff together, I'm not so much, I'm not necessarily always concerned about just volume, but I'm concerned about how resonant something is. So if it sounds very harsh, then I'm reacting to it in a physical way, and that's when I know I have to change something. So even if you take away one thing from me from today's stream, it's probably if you listen to something and it sounds wrong or it doesn't sound good to you, you should probably change it. Like that's I feel like that's always usually a good rule of thumb, or guiding principle rather. But in this case, we're kind of on at a stage where okay, I've got a clean EQ, I've got a clean compressor thing happening. But what if I wanted to maybe take this to, in a way, the quote unquote next level of when, let's say, if I'm in a live concert and I want to give this a little bit more ambience or a little bit more space? That's kind of where reverb comes in, and thinking about different kinds of ways of using reverb. One way that you could of course use it in perhaps a more obvious way is to just use it for a little bit of an effect. So in a lot of the vocal chains that I do, I tend to put reverb directly on the vocal itself as an insert, and I'll show you why in a little minute, as opposed to some kind of return track, which you can absolutely do in live. But yeah, so that's the reverb part. Let's play this back and maybe see if we can add in a little bit of reverb. And I will also mention that this reverb hasn't been fully set up yet. So let's see what we can do with it.
say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it
So
away.
we're starting to have a little bit more reverb in the mix. You can kind of hear that we sound like we're in a different space. That said, though, I do feel like the reverb has a little bit too much low in it, and that's that we could do. We could address this in a couple of ways. One thing that we can do is in the reverb itself, we can put in a little bit of a low cut filter in the input processing and see if you can hear this out. I'm going to exaggerate the reverb for now, but I'm going to move this filter around here in the input processing section. So previously we were over here, we had the low cut off. It sounded like this.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away.
I'm going to turn low cut on and then move this around.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away.
So changing the input processing also does help to change the color of the reverb a lot because you're changing the quality of the signal that's being fed into the reverb. So for a lot of vocal stuff, I generally like to do this just because whenever I have vocals, not always a lot of low cut, but just at least a little bit to take away that bottom end, especially when you have reverb times that end up being super long. Now, something as far as times go that maybe people find a little bit strange, and some people, often might think it's unnecessary too, but I like to do this thing with timed reverb and timed compressors. So whenever I think about reverb, I actually do a lot of calculation stuff. So let's walk through the process. I want to time this reverb maybe at the moment to my tempo of the project, which is currently 160 BPM. So let's turn on the metronome just so we have reference again.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away.
So that's the overall vibe of it. But I want to time this. So I'm going to grab my calculator, and you probably won't see this too, but anyone who has a calculator on hand in the chat or whoever's watching, you're welcome to join along too. And if you want to provide some math tonight, you are most welcome to. I'm going to take 60,000 divided by the BPM of the song, which is 160. And that is 375. What did I just do? 60,000 is the number of milliseconds in a minute, and the BPM of the song is the beats per minute, right? So this way, I know that the result that I'm going to get is the duration of a quarter note. which in this case is 375 milliseconds. And if I want to create some kind of reverb that maybe is a little bit more timed and could sit in a little bit better, maybe I want something that's a multiple of that. So let's times that by 4 and I get 1500. So I'm going to set this decay time to 1500. And this way, even you can experiment with this too. But if you try to up the reverb, even if you up it quite significantly, everything will sound a lot more cohesive than a reverb that might be much longer than that time, or if it's not a multiple of that number. And maybe, maybe it's just in my head. Maybe I'm all just like hallucinating or anything, but I found out that it worked pretty well. Maybe it is in my head. We'll see. So that's the reverb part of this. And we're starting to again cross into kind of like a different sort of territory for the not clean stuff. So again, EQ, compressor, reverb. You might have seen me skip one of the devices in my usual chain, and that's something that's called chorus. So usually for a lot of live vocal stuff, I actually do like putting chorusing on my voice. If you make chorusing super intense, it'll sound like this.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away.
Which could be a very cool effect on its own. But what I like to use chorus for is actually pretty subtle. So usually I have it maybe around like 20% or so. And I found that having it introduced into the vocal that you're using, but controlling it so that's just a little bit actually helps to thicken it up a little bit. And maybe if you're listening to this through like a laptop, maybe your speakers might not be able to show this to you. But if you're on headphones, you might be able to hear this a little bit more too. So if I I'm going to turn off the reverb as well, just so we can hear this a little bit more. But here's before chorus.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say
It's super
you're in
subtle.
love, then throw it away.
Maybe I'll move it up to like 30%. I think that's actually going to be my sweet spot in this case. But it helps to kind of broaden up the vocal a little bit and thicken it up too. And that's because in a way, a chorus is really just like a kind of delay. You're just figuring out a different way to place the audio signal in time in relation to the original signal. Not going to go super in depth into that, but I found that chorus is really helpful. So you've got EQ, you've got chorus, you've got reverb, and you may or may not also have a delay. And I usually try to be quite careful of delay. More often than not, I tend not to have it unless it's on some kind of specific not clean rack. And I'll show you exactly what I mean after this. So I'm not going to turn the delay on here, but I will turn it on in the next part before I move on. And maybe I'll just take a pause to stop for questions. I'm not sure if there are any, and if there aren't, that's totally cool too. But
Great instinct, because we've got two. So
okay, cool.
Jake from Louisiana is asking, when you're timing that reverb, are you saying that the tail will stop right after the quarter note with that calculation?
Okay, cool.
Or however you
Yeah.
time it?
Sure. So was it from Louisiana? Or
Yeah, I think he's in New Orleans. I met him through the
okay,
New Orleans
cool.
user group.
Hi, Jake from Louisiana or
And
New Orleans.
He also loved your squishy sandwich analogy.
Oh, thank you. I love squishy sandwiches. I was just thinking of like potato buns. Like I like potato buns
yeah.
a lot. Sorry, it's like weird food moment. Yeah. So that's a great question. So in theory, yes, the tail should end by then. Because when you think about the decay time, let's actually open up that reverb again. That's a great question. When you think about the decay time, it's the time that the sound takes to decay or to fade away. So ideally, that's going to be the last moment where the reverb is cutting off. Though, like I said, some people claim that, it totally doesn't matter at all. I like to think of it in a very mathy sort of way, I guess. Maybe that's why I like doing the calculation stuff so much. But that's another, so I do the calculation stuff for reverb, and I also do it for compression for like sidechain stuff. And maybe we can even talk a bit about that later. But yeah, so that's because the tail by right should end at that point, especially if you have this up all the way to 100% wet. Let's even do a little bit of a test. I'm going to turn the metronome off and let's try this out. Yeah, so I think that's about it actually. One thing that I've always found really useful is that if I'm not sure of something, I usually just try it out and see if it is true or not. But yeah, we've got about like a 1.5 second tail after that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Jake. That was a great question.
Pure Synthesis says potato buns are bomb.
Oh
So you got
yeah,
potato bun
buns are bomb.
fans.
Yeah, potato buns.
And Tom is asking if Tom from Austin, if vocalists typically expect to hear themselves in headphones with direct monitoring, or do live vocals not go into headphones?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I guess, Tom, it really depends on the vocalist and the performer themselves. Like for a lot of my live performances, just because of the way my setup is, if you've ever seen any of my live performance videos, you'll know that more often than not, I use a headset mic. So for that reason, I almost always never have stage monitors because the feedback is gonna go like insane. My headset mic is just gonna be picking up everything from the monitors, everything else that's in the front of house too, like coming from the audience too. So for that purpose, when I'm performing live, I usually only have my vocals in my in-ears, which are over here. Let me just pull them over quickly. I was filming another performance earlier today, but here they are. So these are my in-ears, and I don't actually use headphones when I'm performing. So these are more of like my mixing headphones or streaming headphones, but I use my in-ears, and I almost always have vocals in here instead of in the monitors. But that's a really great question. I do think there are a lot of live singers, especially if they're more used to how should I put this, band settings maybe when they're I was thinking of like playing in live bands, but also a few people who like, you know, play with DJs and stuff. If they're used to oftentimes holding like a handheld mic, and if they walk around stage a lot, then I find that they do tend to prefer monitors a little bit, and then it's really up to the monitoring engineer to make sure that there's like the monitors are like wrung out and all of those things. But that's a great question too. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for answering those. I'll let you
Yeah,
know
no
if we get any more.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Yeah, keep the questions coming, everyone. We love questions. But let's head back over here. So I was just about to segue into kind of like the not clean stuff, and let's see what's going on over here. So what I might do is, in fact, bring this over into my clean track just so that we're all on the same track. But over here, I have a custom FX rack that I've built for myself. And this is something that I always encourage a lot of vocalists who are starting to get into live electronic music performance to do as a first step. Like you don't even have to think about like, you know, launching clips in Ableton Live or playing back like live instruments. If you're able to know how to control your vocal in a certain way, that could be super useful too. So in this case, let's take a look at what I have on this rack. I'm going to click on this rack and drag it over onto my clean track just so it's here as well. Let's play this vocal back. Let's also reset the original reverb until maybe about 20% or so, 25%. That's good. Maybe a little bit less. Let's do like 18. And I'll close this up. And let's explore what each of these macros does. This is an FX rack that I built from the ground up. But I'm going to show you a little bit of what this is. These are almost like my 8 go-tos. So if you ever see me do any kind of live performance too, you'll usually see me have some kind of controller. If it's not push, it might be the Q Neo or it might be the Korg Nano control. And I'll be moving some knobs that will affect these effects on my vocals. So let's check this out.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in
So we got
love.
some beat repeat over there. We've also got this. Let's check what this is doing.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in
So
love,
that's more
then
of like the distorted type of vocal. It does work quite nicely with a couple of other effects though, and I'll show you that a little bit too. But then we got our classic high pass filter.
say you're in love, then throw it away. Say
And low
you're
pass.
in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw.
Also a phaser.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away.
Also with freeze.
Throw it away. Say you're in love, then
And
throw it away. Say then throw it
the
away.
mystical gray knob, which is not super mystical, but I'll shed a little bit of light on that too. But these are kind of a little bit of a curation of effects that I found are really cool to use on vocals, and even if you're using it on like the master track, they could be a really cool option to do as well. We've kind of got a classic beat repeat to start off with, so let's go ahead and open the devices over here, and I've also got some chains over here too. But you'll see that we start off with a beat repeat. So this is the beat repeat device in live. The way that I've got it set up is that I've got this macro knob here mapped to not just the division at which it's repeating, but also whether repeat is in fact on or off. So this way, whenever I play back any kind of sound, again, not going to go super in depth into this, but whenever I play back any kind of sound or sing, whenever I activate the beat repeat at a certain point, it's going to latch on to that particular phrase or that particular syllable that I had just sang, and it's going to hold that while I'm still doing other singing on top of it. So I kind of like this combinational sort of effect. Let's take a listen.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say
You kind of
you're
got that.
in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say
You can
you're
kind of play with the signals in different ways. That gets pretty exciting in a live electronic music performance. So that's one thing I like to do with the beat repeat. Let's close that up. Over here in the next section, I've got just a pretty traditional sort of overdrive device, and it's really just creating a little bit of distortion.
in love, then throw it away. Say you're in
It's
love.
a mid-rangey kind of distortion that actually I found, interestingly enough, works pretty well when used in tandem with a high-pass filter and a low-pass filter. So I'm going to turn off the distortion for now. But as you saw me kind of demonstrate with the high pass and low pass just now, you can change the way that the sound is filtered. If you implement both of these at the same time, you kind of get like that telephony sort of effect.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in
And
love.
with distortion, it gets a little bit more telephony. So
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then
like
throw
maybe
it
you want to in your live performance sound as if you're passing through like a megaphone or like an old school telephone in a way. This would be one way that you could try going about doing that. So it's in a way it's not just about using these individual knobs, but figuring out how you can use them in tandem with each other. So even the reverb and delay, which I'll get to just in a moment. I also have this phase, and when I was putting this rack together and designing this, it was kind of like my wild card in a way. I was just thinking maybe if there was like a weird kind of effect that I could, get a little crazy on, that would be neat. And that's kind of where phase comes in. It's not really doing anything super, I guess, commonly thought of in vocal processing, but I love using it in tandem with things like delay and reverb. So for example,
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away.
especially with reverb, and people can feel free to disagree with me on this, but I really like the way that phasers and reverb sound together. I think like it makes the reverb wiggle in a pretty interesting kind of way. It's like, oh. So I like how that goes a lot. And that brings us, I guess, to delay and reverb too. So if I head over to the delay, does something that's pretty straightforward, and in this case you might see that I have a quarter note delay. So let's take a look at the delay and what's going on. It's over here. And in this delay, I have turned on the filter. This is something that I mentioned also just now when I was talking a little bit about the reverb and its input processing. But generally, for a lot of delays, I also try to filter it a little bit too so that it doesn't have the exact same frequencies as the original vocal, but it sounds a little bit different, adds a little bit of a more interesting character. So if I activate the delay now,
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in
it's a bit
love.
subtle, but the echoes, or not the echoes really, but the repetitions of the delay are a little bit filtered. And just to illustrate this, I'm going to keep the delay up, so maybe around 40 something percent, but I'm going to move around the filter on the delay device itself. So
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it
I'll
away.
move it back there. But you kind of hear how even though the original vocal is still the same, the repetitions of the delay are kind of filtered in their individual way. And that's something that you can play with around as well. Maybe even on a separate kind of controller, you could map these parameters there and you could have a knob that controls the filter of your delay. That could be a cool option to do as well. But let's head over again to the reverb before I forget. I've got something called long tail over here. And this one I've specifically made very long and I've made it untimed. And I've also made it have a freeze. So that means that when I bring the reverb all the way up, if I want to maybe have some kind of special effect on this, on my vocals, maybe hold on to a specific note, freezing is going to essentially, one really good analogy that I heard someone mention before is like you see a reverb and you kind of like catch it in its moment, and that's like a freeze of reverb. So
Say
here's
you're
reverb,
in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love,
here's the
then throw
freeze,
it away.
and
In
unfrozen.
love, then throw.
So that's something I like to do a lot also, because I think it's cool to, like I said, use your voice more in an instrumental kind of sense. So I think about that a lot too. And I think that this reverb I've used a lot in performances to help me facilitate that. And last of all, but last but not least, we've got fade to gray. Whenever I talk to people about like fade to gray, a lot of people get curious about it, but really it's actually just from the live library. It's a preset. It's one of those one knot presets that lets you do a bunch of different things to it. And essentially everything that's inside it is really just two devices. You've got an EQ3 and you've got a delay. But when you move this one knob, it's going to change the parameters in several different ways. So you can see how each of these knobs is going to all start moving at the same time when we activate the gray. So here we go.
Say you're in love, then throw it away.
So some delay, some filtering with the EQ,
in love, then throw it.
and you got this really cool rhythmic thing if you leave it there. And you can even do stuff like fade the vocal out like that. So that's a kind of like a little bit of a like, for me personally, the oh, whoops, I forgot I'm still faded. Kind of like the top few things that I like to put in a rack. There are a couple of other sounds, or there are a couple of other devices and kind of sound processing that I do for a lot of my vocal performances, but these are kind of like the quintessential parts of a lot of the dolltr setup, especially if anyone's ever seen me do performances. This is pretty much all that I have on my vocal. So yeah, kind of like got a little bit of insight into stuff that no one's really seen before. So yeah, that's kind of most of what I have to share. Although I could actually go on for more, but maybe at this stage, Alberto, do we have any questions? Or
I wanted to say that was great. You're such a natural teacher and you shared so much. It
Thanks.
felt like a vocal masterclass.
Yay, thanks. I appreciate it. I mean, I'll be very, very frank. Like, I'm not a good vocalist and I'm not like a good producer, but I think I'm good at figuring out how to make things work, which I think is sometimes more important. Like, I'm not sure if we would even like necessarily classify ourselves as like, oh, we're the best CTs in the world, but like I feel like we do enough to get us to a certain place. So I feel like I know enough about something to get me to a certain place and to make it it makes sense for like a student or a client or an artist that I'm working with without having them go like, why are you making me turn this knob again? Because some people keep
Yeah.
asking that, you explain it to them and they might not get it the first time. So you want to keep making it clear for them. Like, this is why you're turning this knob to have this effect on something. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear that, because I always say my only musical talent is tenacity. And if I don't know how to do something,
Yeah.
I'll keep working on it.
That's such a good phrase. I may need to borrow that from you at some
It's all
point.
yours.
I'll be like, Alberto said, yes, tenacity.
Something that came up while you were showing your rack, your vocal, is it vocal rack recording?
Yeah, vocal. It's a weird title. I apologize.
Do you use presets per track, or are you on the fly feeling what the song needs in the moment?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. So the reason why I built this rack was a little bit of me wanting to have some kind of starting point so that even if I am building on the fly and adding stuff, it's not from a completely blank slate. So I found that it ends up being a lot faster for me that way. So even though I have this rack to start off with, if I'm listening to a piece and I think, okay, this really doesn't need any delay, I might just open the delay, make sure nothing's hanging out here, and I'll just get rid of it and delete it. So it won't be there. Likewise, if I think like, oh wait, maybe this could even use some kind of maybe direct like saturator on it or direct overdrive, I might even just pop that on immediately. One thing that I have done actually on a vocal recently that I did for a remix that I was helping a friend out with was I put a pedal on the voice
I love
like
pedal.
right before, and pedal is so good. Yay! I'm so glad someone else likes it. Some people like kind of throw it away, and similar to my lyrics, because they don't know how to use it. But it's really cool, everyone. If you can look at pedal, check this out. So
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw it
it
away.
has like a really cool edge to the distortion that I find the normal overdrive doesn't give. So I love pedal a lot.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and
that
you-
was my pedal spiel.
No, you gotta love any device that offers a fuzz option in live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've been really generous with your time. I think you're also very, very good about explaining things, and folks really caught on. We don't seem to have any more questions, but I think people
Cool.
are really engaged with everything you had to
Awesome.
share.
Yay. Thanks so much for having me. This was really fun.
Oh, sorry. We do have a question really quick from
Oh.
Jake again. He would love to hear about the vocoder settings.
Oh, yes, the vocoder settings. Cool. I nearly forgot about that because my Zoom windows were kind of blocking me. Thank you for letting me know, Jake. So the vocoder stuff, I actually just wanted to have here, not so much to go super in depth because I actually do present about this, or I did present about this at the Boston user group before. I just wanted to bring this on as something else that you might also think about if you're thinking about not clean vocal processing. So let's try this out. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this. Again, as a reminder, here's the clean vocal without the the pedal on it. Goodness, I do apologize. Cool, there we go.
Say you're in love, then throw it away. Say you're in love, then throw
We
it.
got that. Let's go ahead, and this may actually sound very strange, but I'm going to make a copy of this by holding down Option and clicking and dragging onto here. And this is the dolltr vocoder rack. It was available to folks who attended the user group meetup, so some people have that here, but it's essentially a way to set up a vocoder for yourself. So I'm going to mute this track. I'm also going to unarm it, but I will turn this on and also turn off the carrier actually. So let's see what's going on. I think it's because my audio from the carrier. Ooh, interesting. Okay, wait. Do I have audio to vocoder, audio to master? Ah, let's see. This should be working, right? That's okay. I'm just going to delete this rack and I'm going to pull on the preset again because I have it as a rack. So that's always great. And let's set this up from scratch. So let's do audio effect rack, dolltr vocoder rack. There we go. Cool. And I'm going to open this up. Hopefully this works again. Yeah, cool. External carrier. And we want the audio from carrier. Where's my carrier? Here
Second to last, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, yes, because I'm silly. Goodness. This is using Live's native vocoder device, and that was so silly of me. I muted the entire group. But the original sound that I had on this track that says carrier over here is a synth sound. This is a patch from Live itself. It's wavetable. Kind of chord progression. But the way a vocoder works is you're actually taking the signal from, say, something like a synthesizer, and you're saying, okay, I want my voice to sound like that. And your voice is usually called the modulator or whatever you want to kind of apply your vocoder effect to. That's going to be the modulator. And the carrier, I like to think of whatever carries the sound. So whatever's the main body of the sound. And that's why in this vocoder device here, I could even take this out of the rack, which I will in this case. I'll turn off this rack over here, but it's going to work even on its own. It sounds a little bit more raw, a little bit more less processed than I would like. And that's why I have it in the rack. Because when I have it in the rack, I have a couple of custom mappings that allow me to shape this a little bit more. And these are some things that we've actually just covered too. So things like delay, reverb, high pass, low pass filter. Let's take a quick listen to how this sounds. High pass. last parameter that I was changing is something that's called the formant. So that's kind of going to shift a little bit of whether something sounds as if it might have a lower body to it, so like a low kind of sound, and then having a higher formant, it's going to end up sounding a little bit chipmunky like that. So you just want to kind of mess around a little bit with the formant, and it's really fun. I usually like playing with formant a lot too. So that's kind of what the rack is doing. It's a sort of preset that I use a lot of, using the vocoder device to create some cool vocoder sounds in live. So I hope that answers the question. Thanks for bringing that up, Jake. I nearly forgot. So
Definitely answered the question. And he's also asking if there's a link to the Boston meetup anywhere.
Yeah, totally there is. I'm running out of windows to look it up now, but Jake, if you look up Ableton Boston user group, you should be able to find it. It's on my YouTube channel actually, so you should be able to locate it from there too. But
Awesome.
if you look up Ableton Boston user group, we had it I think about 2 months ago maybe, if my memory is not failing me too much. But we had some really great presentations from other CTs too. It was myself, Loudon Stearns, Rishabh Rajan, and Wiggs Caro, like the Boston area CTs. So yeah, we did that, and I presented on specifically the vocoder and vocal synthesis.
Yeah, I went ahead and pasted your YouTube link on the chat.
Oh, thank you. Yay, great. But yeah, it should be on my channel because I did host it. I think I forget. Oh dear, doing a lot of things. But yeah, that's kind of probably the more comprehensive part of me explaining this and how specifically it works. But yeah,
Great, can't wait to watch it.
questions. Yeah, thanks. Cool.
Well, Claire, this was great. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, and you've been caught like a Pokemon.
Yay! Caught. Add it to like what's the Pokedex. Goodness, I'm so down with my terminology, but I've been added to the CT Pokedex. That's totally a thing.
Absolutely. And I won't keep you any longer because I know you're an hour ahead. Thank you so much for making the time to be here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Alberto. Can I stop sharing my screen now, or
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
cool.
your call.
But no, thanks for having me. This was super fun. I really enjoyed sharing and seeing all the questions from everyone too. Really appreciate it. If I could just like add one more thing, I think just to
Please, yeah.
Yeah, totally. If anyone's interested in finding out about the content that I post, Alberto posted a link in the chat already. But I love to see you again. I do stream pretty regularly. I stream at this. I actually just started a series called A Trick a Day. Puns again. We're like, yay, big fans of puns. But it's like a short 5-minute little clip where every day I share something cool about live. So for example, today on my YouTube channel, I think I posted a video about how to do like time signature changes or tempo changes in live through automation in arrangement view specifically. But that's a new series, so you can catch me over there, and you can also catch my music everywhere. My artist name, I know it's a little difficult, but it's spelled as lowercase letters DOLLTR exclamation point CK. And if you've seen any other spellings, it probably hasn't been approved by me. So that's how you know something's official or not. But yeah, just wanted to share a little bit about the stuff that I'm doing now. So thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Claire. And make sure to check her work out. She's a really talented artist as well as a
Thank you.
teacher. And make sure to tune in next week. We're going to have Jean-Paul Groben connect all the way from Amsterdam, and he's going to talk about show sync, video sync, and beam. So if you're interested in controlling visuals or lights with live, that's the stream for you. But thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Let's see.